Hello, I'm Dr. Hassaan Tohid, and today we are here with a very interesting topic: study versus an experiment. So what is a study and what is an experiment? You must have seen these two words a lot, that a study was conducted, an experiment was conducted, an experiment was conducted. And if you have already watched my video on what is experiment, then you know what experiment is. Now you're looking for the answer of what is a study. So remember, study versus experiment. How do you differentiate? In the experiments, the scientist, let's say you are a scientist, you will do an intervention or manipulation. You will manipulate the environment. But in the study, you don't manipulate, you just observe. If you are just observing people doing something, let's say you are observing people walking on a road, you just want to see how many people go to office from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. early in the morning in the city of New York. So that is a simple observational study. That is a simple study. You are just observing, you are not doing any intervention. Now let's say you put a big rock in the middle of the highway, or not the highway, let's say the sidewalk. You put a big rock in the middle, and now you are looking at the effects of that rock in the middle on those people who are walking. You see some people change their direction, some people went on the right side, some people went on the left side, some people fell down, some people got injured because of that rock in the middle. Now because you have put that rock in the middle, now this is an experiment. So see the difference? In the observational studies, you just observe. But in the experiment, you did the manipulation, and after that you observe. So never ever think that you're not observing in an experiment. You are observing, of course, you definitely are observing in an experiment, but after an intervention. But in study, you do not do any intervention, you just observe. You just observe, you do not do any intervention. And if it's a clinical trial or experiment, interventional study, they are one and the same thing. So remember, you are intervening, you are manipulating the environment, you are giving something to the patient, or asking the patient to do something, or asking a patient not to do something, and looking at the effects of that intervention on that patient. So this is the big difference between the studies and experiment. Now, the word study actually can be confusing too. So don't get confused. If you see the word study mentioned for an experiment, that is also correct. Some people use it. It is also correct. Don't get confused. We call it experimental study or interventional study, experimental study. So the word study is always there too. So don't get confused that study and experiment, yet okay, study is always observational. No. I'm just saying, if somebody says experiment versus study, so they are actually talking about intervention versus observational studies. But if somebody just uses the word study alone, it could be experimental or it could be observational too. You look at what exactly they are doing. You see if they have manipulation done. If they have manipulation done, if they have given some intervention to the subject, to the patient, whatever they are working with, then it's an interventional study. It's an experiment. Then it's an experimental study, interventional study, or it's a clinical trial. So yes, you can use the word study there too. But if there is no manipulation, there is no change that you have done to the environment, you're just observing, then it's an observational study. Like the social media experiments you see on Facebook, those are all, if somebody is looking at how people behave, that's without making any changes, that's the simple observational study. But when you see that they are doing a social experiment, that a person will go and ask for money pretending to be very poor and see how many people will give him money. Now this is an intervention because this person has become something. The scientist has intervened. But if the scientist doesn't intervene, he's just looking at people's behavior. Simple study, simple observational study. So I hope you will not be confused now between the terminologies experiment versus study. Remember, the word study can be used for both experimental study and observational study, but mostly it is used for observational study. So I hope now the confusion is clear, and I hope I'm able to explain it really well. That experiment, you do the intervention or manipulation of the environment and you look at the after effects of that environment, so you observe that too. In observational studies, you just observe. The word study mostly is used for observational studies only, but can it be used for experimental studies? Yes, it can be. So it can be used, it can be called as experimental studies. That's why we use the word study there. So if you just hear the word study, look at the design, what the scientist is doing, and decide for yourself if it's an experiment or if it's an observational study. So this is how you differentiate, and I hope you will never be confused after watching this video. Stay tuned. We will meet again in the next video. Thank you.